Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to do a basic rivet for art metals and jewelry. So your starting point, I'm just going to do this with scrap metal, and that's what you'll be doing in my class as well as a starting point so that you can make mistakes on scrap pieces before actually doing it to your designed pieces. So I just have two different kinds of metal. I have my nickel and I have copper. And then what I'm actually going to be using is for your rivets, you can use wire, but we also have these small nails which come in different size gauges. Okay, so I have this up at the front for you. And what you'll do is you'll actually pull out a nail and you'll grab one of our gauge plates. And the gauge plates are actually located in the side of the classroom where all of your hammers are, okay? And with the gauge plate, you take your nail and you're actually going to slide it in through the side, okay? Now, I'm at 13 right now and it goes in so easily, so I wanna try 14. 14, it still goes in really easily. 15 is a tighter squeeze, but when I actually put it to 16, it won't go in. So I know that my drill bit size needs to be 15 because the gauge is actually 15 for this. So this is the nail I'm gonna be working with. I'm just gonna put it on this piece of cardboard so I know what I'm working with. And then what I need to do is in our actual drill bit box, okay, these are all marked with the number of gauge they are. I'm gonna grab a 15 drill bit, okay? So I grab my 15 drill bit and I'm actually gonna put it with the nail that I'm going to be using, okay? Now, just like from our first cut and pierce project, I need to make a seat with one of our center punches back on the anvil so that I can actually drill through this, okay? I also, since my edges are curved up because this is just scrap metal, I'm gonna bring a rawhide mallet back to the anvil as well and actually pound this out so it's flat and it's easier to put a rivet through. So I'm gonna put it in the corner. Now the reason I have cardboard right here is because if you would like your piece to actually rotate, you can actually put a piece of cardboard between the three layers. So this is one that does not have cardboard, so it does not move, but it has, you can see it's two copper pieces with a nickel or a silver rivet, okay? That one does not move. Well, this one actually has, I kept the cardboard out. You're not gonna wanna see the cardboard on your piece, but I put cardboard in between so that if you have a piece that needs to move, you can actually include cardboard around it so your pieces can be interactive and moving, okay? For this piece, I'm not going to make it moving. I'm just going to rivet two pieces together. So my next step is heading to the anvil to put a center punch in here and then to take it to the Dremel tool. Okay, so the first step when I come back to the anvil at the back of the classroom is I need a rawhide mallet because I want to flatten out these two curled edges on my piece of copper. So I'm just going to hold it down so that my piece is entirely flat. Okay, and now my triangle is flat. And my triangle is actually the piece that has the mark on it for the center punch. I really only need the center punch on one piece, or the actual seat. So I'm gonna put my center punch on the permanent marker dot for where I need the seat. Put my center punch on there, and then I take my ball peen hammer, just a couple of taps, and now you can see from the back side that there is a tiny mark on here. You don't want it to go through and you don't want to damage your metal, but you can see I actually put a little seat in here so that when I put the drill bit through, it will go through my piece without sliding off. Okay, so my next step is I have just used the center punch to put a seat into my copper piece, which is on top. Okay, I'm gonna hold these two pieces together. If you would like to just kind of tape them on the edge in case they're sliding, or if you have ones that are really small with detail, feel free to do that as well. Remember, take a look at my safety. I'm always wearing goggles, especially when using the Dremel and the Dremel press, because there are tons of different shavings that can pop off, the drill bit could break, etc. So you want to be very careful with that, okay? So I'm going to set this underneath on the bed. I'm going to line up my two pieces. And before I even turn it on, I'm actually going to bring down the Dremel to see where it's going to enter in my piece, okay? Now I'm bringing it down. Okay, so now it actually goes into that seat that I needed, okay? So now I'm going to turn it on. I hold with one hand. I bring down with the other. Make sure you go through both pieces. It might take a little bit, and then pull it back up and turn it off. And now I have a hole that goes through both pieces that is exactly the same size. Okay, your next step, once you are done putting your hole in with the Dremel, is on the back side of the nickel piece, which is the bottom piece. There's rough metal on here from the Dremel going through. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set this on the side of the table, and I'm going to grab a file, okay? And I'm just simply going to file that down so it's not rough. You can use one of your small files for this. You can use a bigger file. You just don't want rough metal on your piece. Okay, so now I have that ready. I am ready to put in my rivet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my nail that is the size that I worked with, which was size 15 gauge, and I'm going to actually slide it through my piece. So if you can see on top of here, now I have my two pieces held together, and I have the top of my nail head. And then on the other side, I have the rest of the nail. So what I need to do is I need to use these cutting pliers, okay, and I'm going to trim down this nail because I don't want to try and hammer this all the way down. It just won't work that way. Now when you're using the pliers, there's two different ends to the pliers. One that goes on an angle and one that is flush. Use the flush side closest to your piece so that when you are cutting down the end of the nail, it's a flat end instead of a angled end. It'll make it easier for you when you are riveting. So now I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to cut about a millimeter, leave about a millimeter of room. You don't want too much. Okay, just be careful if you're working near other people so it doesn't go flying around. And now you can see I still have a little piece of metal at the side, but now the pointy end is gone of the actual nail. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece along with my ball peen hammer, and I'm going to take it back to the actual anvil so I can hammer it down and I can actually rivet it in place, but it has to be using steel. So I'm using a steel ball peen hammer and then a steel anvil. Okay, so in order to rivet my piece, I have my ball peen hammer, which is made of steel, and I have an anvil. Now, when you're doing this to your finished piece, you want to make sure that you wrap this in actual fabric so that you aren't damaging your piece with texture with the hammer. But for your practice piece, you can just do it with your hammer and the anvil. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip it over so the nail, the top of the nail head is on the bottom, and I'm going to start hammering on the back side. So you can actually see the part I had cut off of the bottom of the nail, okay? Now as I'm doing this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hammer and I'm going to actually push it off to the side. So I'm kind of angling it different directions so that it will actually spread out the piece. Now remember, this might take a while to actually hit it down, and that's okay. But you really wanna work on only hitting the metal and not your piece. So I have a start to it. Now I'm going to flip it over, and you can just go back and forth from side to side. This one is already flattened because this is actually the head of the hammer nail. So this one will be a little bit easier. You can use the flattened side of the ball peen hammer, or you can use, if you want to go a little bit more, if it's a little bit more raised, you can use the rounded side. The flattened side won't damage your piece. Okay, so now I come back to this side. And make sure this guy is flush. Okay, so you can hardly see it. And now you can see in terms of your design, because I used a silver nail and this is nickel silver, you can't really see my rivet. But the other piece that I used was copper. So you can actually see the top of the nail head on the copper piece, okay? So just think of that as something that is a really simple but effective design element. And using repetition, you can create lines with those rivets and doing multiple rivets on one piece. Now mine is still a little bit raised, so I would actually come back into this side. And hammer my piece down until it's flat and flush with my piece. Okay, and then I can still twist it a little bit, but not as much as with the cardboard in between. And then if I want to put another rivet here and another rivet here, then obviously my piece would not move. And that is how you create a rivet.